Hello, contractors, and welcome to a very special episode of Toolbox for the Trades. My name is Jackie Aubel, and today I am handing the mic over to my colleague, Josh Liu. Josh speaks with ServiceTitan's Chris Hunter and Deanna Kawasaki to talk about summer trends for contractors in 2024. Let's jump in.
Here I'm joined today with Chris Hunter, our principal industry advisor here at ServiceTitan. Chris, how's your day going?
Hey, doing great, man. Always love getting to speak with you and Deanna and cover some awesome topics. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. We've gotten the chance to do it a few times now and always excited to have you back. And Deanna, we're joined with you, Deanna Kawasaki, Senior Director of Product Management here at ServiceTitan, focused on Titan Intelligence. How has your week been so far?
Excellent. Always excited to talk about numbers and what's going on and be with Chris and you.
Awesome. So yeah, today we're talking about a few different topics. One, we want to cover the latest reports in our economy. We want to touch on the changes in consumer confidence. I know a report came out very recently, I think a week ago. We want to look at the upcoming summer forecast and then some policy changes that are going to impact the different industries that we serve. And at the end, we'll touch on the new benchmark report. Deanna is really excited to share that. That's out for ServiceTitan customers. If you're not a ServiceTitan customer and listening, it's still really valuable to kind of benchmark and see where you're at compared to our customers. And we'll talk about growth rates and things like that as well that we're seeing across the industry and in different regions. So to kick it off, Deanna, can you first tell us, we'll take a step back, what is the Consumer Confidence Index?
The Consumer Confidence Index is conducted by a panel group every month. Everybody watches it. What it does is it surveys several thousand people across the US and asks them expectations. What do you think you're going to do? Do you think you're going to make large purchases over the next 6 to 9 months? How do you feel about the labor market? Do you think your income will increase or decrease? So it's about how comfortable the consumer is to spend money or not spend money. So it's really what I have seen working at ServiceTitan is it really is an important thing to watch because we're so dependent on how homeowners and consumers view their money and how easy or difficult it will be to get them to buy things, invest in their home or services.
And what does the latest report show us?
Ah, well, we've been on a trend for the last few cycles with regards to consumer confidence. I think anyone who watches the news already would not be surprised that confidence in April, released about a week ago, as you said, dropped again significantly. We've been dropping slowly. We're dropping a little harder now than we have in the past. And a lot of that is just the uncertainty in the economy. It doesn't, for those who do watch a lot of the numbers, things like unemployment rates and labor market things, it doesn't really make a lot of sense because the general stats look okay. It doesn't seem to flow, but it's the confidence that the consumer is having, the homeowner has in will these conditions continue? Will I have money? Should I save my money because I don't know how uncertain the future will be? And that's what that consumer confidence is. I'm unsure as a homeowner or a consumer, should I be holding on to my money a little bit longer?
Right. And why do you think this year it's taken, or this latest cycle, it's taken kind of a heavy spike downwards? What are
So
the
there's
factors?
so much going on again. So we have the presidential election going on right now. So we are in the heat of it. You have the Democratic and the Republican party selection going on as well. But that presidential election, this is going to be one of the hottest and is one of the hottest elections going on. It is consuming homeowners, Americans all over every state. And it's more than just the consumer confidence, it has to do with policy. And I know that Chris will talk about that later, but the confidence is lower because consumers are unsure because each one of our candidates has a very different policy perspective. And with whichever one is selected or voted on, will change the course. We're coming off of also a global kind of crisis going on with a lot of the things going on at the universities, a lot of the unrest that's going on that's making consumers even more uncertain about what that will take with them. The stopping of or slowing down of produce, the slowing down of different kinds of markets going on.
Yeah. And I know before this call, you mentioned before during the election, marketing expenses kind of go up generally. And then some of the policies, can you give some examples of that and how it might impact contractors?
Sure. I've talked to some folks and we actually called this out in the V7 benchmark, which was not the one that's currently available, but the one prior. And if we have any ServiceTitan customers who did not download their last one, which was a year-end report, I encourage you to contact your success team and they will be able to get you the prior version. The reason for that is that we did 2024 trends to look for. One of those trends is that marketing costs, I should say, are expected to be higher. And that's because as we get closer to the election and the national conventions, you're going to find that you're going to have to compete with the noise of the actual conventions and the elections themselves. There's actually some stats in the links out as to how much more that could be, but it is substantial. And so we want our customers to be aware that if they can buy ahead, great, do it while you can get good pricing. And if you can't, just be aware that you may be charged more than ever before with regards to that.
Yeah. And Chris, if you're, voice of the contractor here listening to all this and consumer confidence is low, how do you adapt? What would you recommend to respond to this?
Yeah. Well, my job here at ServiceTitan, I get to not only study this data, learn from Deanna what it actually is meaning, but also get to learn from the best of the best contractors about, hey, what are you doing out there and how is this affecting you? And one thing is very, very clear. The best contractors, they know their customer. It affects the way they market, the way they offer financing, the way that they do the service call, everything that goes into it. So a lot of this is, hey, keeping in touch with what your customer in your area, how they're feeling, what they're doing. Because think about it. No one wakes up in the morning and goes, oh, I think I'll call my HVAC guy today just because, maybe I need something. No, when it breaks, it's stressful. They don't know what to do. So then when they call, they're stressed out, they're worried. So if a contractor knows, hey, they're stressed and also they're worried about their money, maybe we can start putting that to ease really early in the conversation and then offering all the financing tools and such that we do. So it's very important to stay in touch with your customer. And also on the flip side of this, contractors the last few years have sold businesses at record rates, right? I mean, they've been anyone and everyone that wanted to sell a company could sell one. But right now it's a little bit different of a story just because with the interest rates being higher, the private equity groups, they're being a lot more selective on who they're actually acquiring now. And they're only looking for the best of the best contractors back back to these people that know their customer and ones that are still performing well in this market. And for those companies, they're still able to be acquired. But those that aren't, that are trending, down, they're not nearly as attractive anymore. And frankly, with the cost of money today, they're just not getting the offers that they once was. So that's another interesting thing to note about this whole consumer confidence and how it ties into all phases of contracting, I guess.
Yeah. It sounds like being adaptive is one of the key things you have to be as a business. Nothing's ever the same. It's constantly changing. I want to shift gears a little bit into the numbers. I know the ServiceTitan data showed that 2024 opened up with a 9% growth rate on average. Can you dig into that report and tell us about what different regions look like?
Yeah, this is why I love the benchmark report. So if you haven't got your benchmark report, if you're with a ServiceTitan customer, you got to go get this thing because it gives you these updates. I get so many calls from my friends across the industry and they're just like, wow, man, are we doing okay? Because, we're at this rate. What's everyone else at? How are they doing in other regions? And so the benchmark report answers all those questions for them. So it tells them how they're performing versus their peers, other companies like them. But I love the one that has the map. It's got different regions on the map and it shows what's going on, from the west to the east to the south to the northern Rockies. It shows what everybody's doing. And overall, 9% growth rate, I was actually pretty pleased to see this because we thought, oh my gosh, this year is going to be extremely tough. It's going to be very flat. Well, 9% pre COVID was actually a really good year. I can remember budgeting for a 10% year over year growth rate and that being very healthy. Almost every company would say, yes, I'll take that. That's very good. We got a little spoiled through the COVID area where, our average growth rate was like 26%. You know, that kind of fluffed everything up a little bit with inflation and with more demand. And we pulled forward the installs and stuff through that period that we should have been seeing right now. So 9% to me was really nice. That's being fueled, and Deanna's going to talk about this in a little bit too, but it's being fueled by we had a very warm Q1. In fact, Deanna's data showed that it was the ninth warmest on record for this time frame. Surprisingly, so whenever I look at the stats, who actually grew and who did not, everybody was doing really well, with the exception of out west. They only had a 1% growth rate. So we're talking California, Nevada. These areas are traditionally high growth. They're killing it. But if you remember what happened with them with the weather the first quarter of the year, man, it was rainy, it was cool, it was just very unseasonable, so they were down. Now, contrast that with like the most heavily one that was the biggest growth rate was the Northern Rockies. It was 14%. They were doing very well in the first quarter, but looks like overall 9%. I would be proud of that in this economy, in this day and age, and keep my pedal to the metal, as it says, with the marketing and everything else, to continue seeing that growth rate grow.
It's funny that pre-COVID, 9% people would have been pretty happy about, but now everything's been inflated. It reminds me of a study they did with monkeys where I think they gave the monkeys two apples and the monkeys were like really stoked. Okay, I got two apples. But then they took one of the apples away and the monkeys
Yeah.
got so angry. They took their apple and like threw it at some of the researchers. But it's like, wait a second, you still have one apple. So it's
That's
funny
it.
how that psychology works.
Well, and Josh, so think about this. So the companies that were acquired during that whole run with COVID, they were seeing these exceptional growth rates. They were bought thinking that these growth rates are going to continue. Well, lo and behold, now reality set in. We're kind of back to normal, as I call it. And so all these companies that were acquired expecting this growth to continue, they're not seeing it. So there is a lot of pressure out there. There's a lot of pressure from groups to operators, private equity groups down to the operators to, hey, what's going on? Why aren't you performing at these high levels? And so there's a lot of more marketing dollars being thrown at it as well. So Deanna talked about the pressures of the marketing dollars and the spend. We've already got all these other things that are making things go up. Now people are trying and trying and trying to spark demand that may or may not be there. So it's creating an interesting dynamic. But what we're seeing, I've talked to companies all over, and there's a tale of two stories. And I didn't know what this was called. Deanna's fixing to tell you what it was called, but I'm hearing from people that are doing really, really well. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason. And they're like, Chris, we're just killing it. I know everyone is the same. They're slower and things like this, but we are actually doing really, really well. And then I'll talk to another company, could be in the same area, same type of companies. They saw the same growth rate during COVID. And they're like, man, what is going on? We are just struggling. We're hurting here. What's happening? So I told Deanna this, and Deanna, tell me what in the world. She actually has, of course, a scientific name for this, and she saw it in the data. So
So Chris and I often, when we do our webinars, we prep ahead of time and talk about what's going on in the industry from his side, what he's hearing, and then what I'm seeing in the data, as well as what I'm researching out in consumer land and consumer world. And as he was telling me this, I said, I'm seeing something similar. I'm seeing this bimodal distribution. And he said, what is that? A bi what? And I said, it's bimodal. I said, the easiest way to explain it is everyone knows what a normal curve is, visualize that bell curve. Now, think if you split that into two bell curves side by side with each other, a double hump camel is how we think of it. And I said, so what we're seeing, or what I'm seeing in the data, is that normal distribution is pulling apart and separating one group doing really well in the revenue and their performance numbers, and then one group pulling lower. And so a lot of companies don't see this because they're not used to bimodal distribution or understanding what that is, but they're looking at averages and means and things like that. And what happens is the middle is still the middle, but the difference is that the population is separating into two groups. And so you have to kind of know what you're looking for. And so as Chris and I were talking about that, we're trying to figure out how we can help our customers be on the right side of that, be on the positive side of the camel's hump, not the downside, and what you can do.
well, you know what happens if you're the the contractor sitting on the high hump, and then there was another one sitting on the low hump. All you can see is the tail end of the contractor that's winning. So you got to figure out how to get on that high hump. And luckily, we noticed what those contractors are doing versus the others. So I love that.
Yeah.
I love the visualization of the two hump camel. That makes perfect sense now.
So, Chris, what are some of those contractors on the high hump doing? What tactical advice or tips could you give that listeners today could start to implement?
So when I first started visiting with them, they couldn't put their finger on it, and so I was like, okay, so just talk to me here. Tell me what's going on. They're like, Chris, I don't know. We're just staying really focused. We've got our budgets, we got our numbers, we're having our meetings, our trainings, we're still investing in advertising. And it all came down to a few things. One, very strong leadership. These people decided they weren't going to participate in any type of downturn. They said, you know what? No more excuses. Let's execute. So it started with the leadership. Two, they invested in their team and they still helped their team grow and perform. That means the right tools, like things with ServiceTitan. Maybe they've invested in the pro products like Dispatch Pro or Marketing Pro, Schedule Pro, whatever it may be. They're investing in the right tools and helping their team succeed. But then the last was this: they just got back down to basics. They had their yearly, monthly, weekly, daily numbers. They did whatever it takes to fill that job board. And then once they were there, they executed. And Deanna pulled some data for me, and it was very, very interesting. And I'd love to just talk about it just 1 second. But she pulled a report for me that said, okay, what does the best performers do? Like those in the top 20%. What are those in the bottom 20%? And what are those in the middle? And we looked at it all different regions, just like we did with the benchmark report. And so that way it was apples to apples comparison. And just to give you an example, I mean, this is just one piece of example of what those that are winning are doing. So we looked at a thing like revenue per technician. Okay. So I'm just going to give you an example. Let's say the South, and I'm going to look at just March. The South region, the average revenue per technician for the best companies was around 33,000 per tech. Great. Okay. What does that mean? Well, then I look at the lower performing technicians in the South as well. That revenue per tech was 13,000. So, okay. So we've got the same type of companies in the same region, and one's performing at this level and one's performing at a significantly different level. And then in the middle, as expected, the average revenue was a little over 21,000. So that just shows you this bimodal thing that we're talking about. Same region, same type of company, same business mix. Some are executing and some aren't. And this is where it all goes back to the basics, the fundamentals of you got to fill the job boards first. You got to have the proper training. You got to have your pricing correct. So that way, when you're in the home, and then the last one is, I think, one of the most important things in this whole thing. It goes back to knowing your customer. They're leading with financing. They're making financing part of the conversation very early, very often, taking all the pressure off and just realizing, hey, consumers maxed. And then, I mean, so when I say they're maxed, what with credit card usage, what's the latest data you're seeing with that?
The majority of folks especially in the moderate to lower incomes, to basically regular America, is maxed out on their credit cards, and it's growing. So those folks who have credit, great, they can still use it, but the majority are credit hungry because they're using it for basic means like gasoline and food. Those are the two biggest in the consumer confidence that inflation has hit the most on. And credit cards are the way in which the customer, the homeowner, has been able to fill the gap of higher prices and not higher wages. And so they're charging. And now what happens, right? A situation hits with heat or cooling or something. Now they have they have an expense. They can either replace for 8,000 to 10,000, maybe, or they can repair for 1,000. And even the 1,000 is a stretch. And so that's why the leading with financing is a great option for these consumers or homeowners that don't have the ability anymore, or actually don't even want to charge that last 2,000 on a credit card because they might need it for food, for gas. So they need to have that for, I got a flat tire. Like, we need to think about, these are regular homeowner Americans that just don't have. And it's not just their credit cards. They've also eaten through all of the savings that they had during COVID. So their savings is gone, no additional income. Money is not necessarily increasing because prices are too high and businesses are doing okay. Everybody is very conservative right now, waiting for the economic outlook on the presidential election. I know, Josh, you asked about policy. Policy, we hear that word kind of thrown around and said a lot, but we don't understand really what that means. For just even someone, for everyone who drives a car, policy makes the decision on the tax on your gasoline. If the administration wants to reduce it, they can remove some of the taxes, temporarily suspend them. That has been done during this administration. Where you guys do remember our gasoline went down $1 a gallon. I was so excited. I could actually like fill my car up for less than $100 for a truck. Now, if I extrapolate that to a business who has a fleet, that's a lot of money that you're talking about in just overhead that a simple policy tax change is making. Now, think again about consumers and interest rate. Interest rates are high. Folks would love to get out of the house that they had. Maybe they've outgrown it because they're older, but they can't. They won't move because the interest rates are too high. They would have to buy and it they would be buying at a higher interest rate. They're waiting. Everyone is waiting to see. And so that policy impacts everything that we're seeing: imports, exports, which is the production of our materials, right? Shipments of hard goods, our GDP. I believe I'm looking at my notes. We actually decelerated in the first quarter for the first time in a long time, our GDP this quarter. So it's a big deal watching this consumer confidence. And so again, I go back to Chris because I always go to Chris on like, how can we help our businesses help their customers, our peers, our other homeowners get the services they need when they don't have the cash right now, but yet they need the service. And we keep going to lead with financing, start the conversation so it's not an embarrassing conversation, right? So it's not like, "Oh, do you need the money?" It's like, "Hey, everyone's doing this, take advantage of the offer."
Yeah, that's it. And not being afraid to even offer it on repairs. So
Yep.
I'm a big proponent of, hey, we can fix anything. So if something's broke, don't stress. We can fix anything. Just sometimes it's not always the best decision to keep throwing good money and maybe something that's bad or an older system or plumbing system, whatever it may be. But when you lead with financing on both, you give multiple options. So you're giving a repair and a replacement option. Now you're giving them choices, and ultimately let them make good decisions. You can't know what it's like to be in their shoes, right? So I mean, our job is to just do the best job we can, serve them very well, give them multiple choices, provide all the ways that we can help them pay for this thing, and then let them make the choice. And in the end, if they don't choose the replacement, hey, guess what? They still had a great experience. These people came out, they served well, they communicated well, they gave me options. They didn't try to force a replacement on me. And in a few years, when it is time to replace, they're going to remember that. They're going to call you back. So I like that. But and one last note here on this topic, and this is specific to air conditioning, but this can be the same for plumbing or whatever. Air conditioning used to could get a replacement for five, six, $7,000 if you wanted to. Nowadays, man, it's just not the case. I mean, we're talking, you know, 9 to 20 plus $1,000 for replacement. And I don't know about y'all, but I mean, when you open up your checkbook and you're thinking, wow, do I want to part with this, or do I even have this, or do I have to go get a loan on my 401k, or what do I do to get this type of money? It's stressful and it's hard. And even if you have the money, just offering the finance, because I may be thinking, you know what? I may think after this election, things are going to get a little bit better. And maybe I have my stock market funds will be going up a little bit. Maybe I'm going to get a new contract or a bonus or something later on. Let me just, I can afford to pay that monthly payment, a couple $100 a month. Let me do that for a little bit, and I'll worry about this big ticket payoff later. Give them that choice, because I guarantee you they're feeling it right now.
And I want to go back real quick because this financing thing is really actually a huge advantage for both the homeowner and for the business, in the sense that a lot of times when you have this kind of stressed economy, and we saw this in 2007 and 8 for those of us who are in business then, discounting sometimes comes in. Well, they start shopping around and things like that. That is not necessarily the case in this kind of economy. So in this kind of economy, you can preserve your price. You can preserve your
Yep.
service price and not discount if you offer financing, because it's not the lesser of the ticket that they can't afford any of it.
Right.
So offering the financing is much more valuable. And we saw this in 2007, 8, where I worked with companies and we changed the selling strategy from discounting or price matching and things to hold your price, offer the financing, and we got something like a 30 or 40% increase in sales. It was unbelievable. Now, the thing to keep in mind though, this works in this economy. When the market starts to turn, so I don't want you to come back and say, Chris and Deanna said this is working and it's not working anymore. When the economy turns positive, there will be a different strategy. So you'll have to come back to the podcast and or our webinars and learn what the new strategy is then. But for right now, for the foreseeable future in this year, this is a good way to both get the homeowner what they need and also preserve your pricing. And the other thing is, as Chris mentioned, and I'm probably belaboring this, even though the consumer is stressed and they may not have the funds for a purchase or an install, but more of a service, this is the exact time you start building that CRM database. Track the fact that you have a replacement, that estimate was done, so that when the market does turn, remember what we said about strategies when the market turns, that's the first place you're going to go. Now that the market is turning positive and you see that, you go back for them for that higher ticket, that installation. So like you farm right now, you're planting the crops right now for that future.
That is super wise. Chris, there's two tactics we covered that I think would make a huge difference. One, we've talked a lot about financing. Let's stick with that for a second. If you're listening and you're like, okay, all right, this is the year of financing. I need to solve this problem. And it's a difficult problem. There's a lot of math involved. How do I get technicians to use it? What advice would you have for contractors who know they should do financing, but have always struggled to get started?
Well, so two things. One is going to be on the communication side. One's going to be on the technical side. So first, let's start with the technical side. Things with ServiceTitan, like integrated financing, where it can actually offer multiple lenders, different things. And we've even got some new stuff coming out where it's going to use Titan Intelligence to help choose for you. It's going to say, hey, if in a purchase range of this, here is the recommended plans for you. In a higher ticket range, here's some recommended plans for you there. So utilizing technology to make it easy, that's kind of step one. Number two is the communication side. So you talked about with the technicians and such like that. Well, a lot of people, make these decisions and then they forget to educate the front line of all of the reason why. So I think, just like we've talked about the reasons why, you sit down in your service meeting, in your sales meeting, and you talk with your technicians about this, they're going to feel it too. They understand. They're seeing it more than you are. They know every day when it comes time to present that price that they cringe sometimes because they're like, man, it's expensive. And oh my gosh, are they going to have the money? Are they not? So if anything, this is going to relieve some stress from them because you're going to show them how to take the stress out of it by offering this and presenting it early and often. And in fact, we had one customer after he heard Deanna and I's Pantheon speech last year. It was as simple as he sent out an email reminding customers that we offer multiple financing. And he said, I think I can't remember exactly what the number was, but they sold like $44,000, if I remember right, worth of work in the first 30 days just by sending out one email with a reminder that we do this. So there's some things that you can do. I know, like even for me, whenever we sent out our dispatch bio of the comfort consultant that was going out, we would make it very well known right there, that, hey, don't worry, we've got financing available for this. Then most people choose, X or this unit and they could watch a little video even to see all about that system that we offered. So it was kind of a soft way of opening the door before we even got there. I think technology and communication is definitely the way to go.
That makes sense. And I'm starting to get why you guys say lead with financing. Like you had it in the bio, they did it in their marketing. It's not like some last resort thing you pull out,
Yeah.
but it's something
Well,
you lead with.
well, think about it, Josh. If you're the homeowner and the whole time that technician's there, he's working, he's doing stuff, you're thinking, oh, please God, don't let this thing be dead. Let me be able to afford this. I've got, little Susie's ball camp things coming up I got to pay for. I've got college for, we've got for this, that, whatever it is. So, I mean, if right off the bat, hey, whoa, this is an option. They've got multiple lenders, even for some with challenge credit. Okay, do your job, present me some options, then I'll decide if I want to move forward with replacing or not.
Yeah, the second tactic that we talked about, I feel like it is one of those going back to the basics, offering multiple options. I hear this is so important. I feel like everybody knows it, and yet some still struggle, and they may be the ones on the bottom of that bimodal distribution, the lower hump. For those people who it's like, okay, now we're finally going to tackle this. What advice would you have for them? What's the first step to offering multiple options?
Well, one, if you can make it easy on the technicians by utilizing things like proposal templates, estimate templates, have it pre-done, that's definitely it. We've also got some tools in Pricebook Pro that automatically do this for you as well. They'll help recommend items for you. So back to utilizing technology, but whatever you can do to eliminate the technician having to sit there and build multiple things, you can have them pre-done. I think that's how you're going to get it. And then the other part of this is something I say, I think on every podcast, every webinar I'm on, but it's what gets measured and recognized gets repeated and improved. So, I mean, if you're measuring how many estimates or how many options that they're giving and you're recognizing them for that effort, then I guarantee you it'll get repeated and improved. So definitely what gets measured and recognized gets repeated and improved. So make that one of the KPIs that you're looking at, how many options given on this call and see what happens.
Yeah, I remember back in my sales days, the manager I was working with was such a great leader, and he would hype up people doing the behaviors that he wanted repeated. He'd be like, "Wow,
Yeah.
look, Josh comes to our additional trainings that people don't. Not everybody comes to these. It's time out of your day, but look, he's selling way higher than everybody else. If you want to make more money, you should probably be going to these trainings like Josh, as an
Well, heck
example." And
yeah.
so
And it
things
felt
like
pretty
that.
dang
So
good to get that recognition, didn't it? Yeah. So guess what? You probably went out there and you probably did even more of them, So I mean,
exactly.
that's the way human nature works. It's amazing.
Yeah. Now, going back to policy changes, there's one very specific one I wanted to call out, the R410A refrigerant change. Can you
Well,
tell us about
yeah.
this?
So specifically in the HVAC space, we've seen significant price increases. I mean, everybody's seen price increases, but equipment has really went up. I mean, we've had things like SEER 2 and plus all the inflationary things that happen with it. So, like I said, HVAC, HVAC systems aren't cheap anymore. They're extremely expensive. And now I'm getting word from multiple dealers and I've talked to manufacturers and distributors as well, but there is a refrigerant change coming about at the end of the year. And the new equipment uses A2L refrigerants. It's going to make the equipment about 20 to 25% more expensive again. So, wow, we take something that was already hard to buy, already going up in cost, and we're going to add another 20 to 25% of it. And rumor has it too that, this is actually, you're going to probably start seeing these being sold around September, in the fall time period. And by January 1st, that's all you can buy. So once again, getting your pricing right is going to be more important than ever due to this policy change. And two, the service department. So many people aren't priced correctly to run just service. They've allowed install to subsidize their profitability of their service department. Well, now it's more important than ever to make sure that you're right on the money in your service department. So if you can use things like in ServiceTitan, like dynamic pricing, that will actually help you maintain those margins, help keep your price book up to date, things like that. You're going to find yourself a lot better off when you get those P&L statements and not see your profits just whittled away because you didn't do as many installs. So that's important. And then two, there's one other thing that's out there. We've talked about this until we're blue in the face. And in typical government fashion, it's been very slow to roll out. But with the IRA, right? We heard the Inflation Reduction Act. There was going to be all this money dumped into for contractors or consumers to get towards replacing their system with a higher efficiency heat pump. Where's the money? Where's the money at? Well, good news is it's still there. It's still coming. It's just so slow to make it here. But as of right now, and how I keep up with this, if any of you out there want to kind of see, hey, what's going on in my state? If you go to the Department of Energy, you can look up the rebate, home energy rebates, and it'll show you each state a map of where they're at. Did they submit an application? Was it approved? When are they going to have rebates available? So as of right now, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There's about 13 or 14 states that have submitted their applications for the funding. And New York is the first one that's had one approved. So I would say New York is right on the verge of being able to offer these rebates. And back to what Deanna was saying with this, we talked about '07 and '08, what happened during that time frame, and you didn't have to offer the discounting. Well, on the flip side of that, there was a rebate that was out there. It was like $1,500. It was a tax credit, is what it was. But man, it boosted our HVAC sales. So they were already stressed about these higher price things. And now we can say, hey, but guess what? We got this great rebate out there, this tax credit. Well, with these, my goodness, you can get up to $12,000 for a homeowner to replace their system, upgrade their wiring, even their electrical panel. So when you're talking about these extremely expensive systems, now you can come in with this rebate program that's there, plus financing to cover whatever's left over. I think you'll see a nice little boom in sales in these things. It's just a matter of when it's going to get there and who's going to take action on it.
Yeah, a little glimmer of hope. I know we've kind of doom and gloom here with the consumer confidence, but speaking of glimmer of hope, Deanna, can you talk a little bit about the summer and the forecast for this summer?
Oh, HVAC will be happy. So
Yes.
for last year, it was one of the hottest summers. It was the hottest summer in many areas. I live in Arizona. We broke the record of, I think, 40 or 45 days above 110 consecutive days of heat. So it was crazy hot here. This year, it's expected to be as hot, if actually not a little hotter. And it's going to come sooner. Summer's going to come sooner than it's ever come before. So if you are in an area that hasn't had its summer yet, get prepared. Arizona's actually already started. We've already had our above 100 starting already in April. So it's going to be more. It's going to be more and longer. So
To add to that, here's the fun thing. Now I'm going to give the data. Oh my gosh, can you believe this? I'm giving the data person the data. But Deanna's team in the past, they actually put together this study, Josh. It was amazing. I always knew that, yeah, if we could just hang on until summer, my goodness, as an HVAC company, we were gonna survive and then we would thrive. And so, but what did that actually mean? So we did a study of what these heat waves actually mean to those that do HVAC and what to do to the revenue. And compared to a baseline of a summer day without a heat wave, we found that the first temperature event increases the daily revenue by about 90%. So that first heat wave, you can expect a 90% increase in revenue. So talk about needing to be prepared. Oh my goodness. You should have all hands on deck, making sure when that first one hits, you're ready to execute. And I know we've talked a little bit about making sure your service side is profitable, but one install, if you can do one install, it produces the same amount of gross profit as doing a whole week's worth of service work. So when the opportunity hits on this first heat wave, be prepared to capitalize on those installs. That means making sure your crews are ready. Maybe they can do 2 a day. I just wrote an article about this, how to do 2 a day. Many contractors do it all over the nation. We train how to do it at Go Time Success Group. But be prepared. The second heat wave that come, there was still a 55% increase in revenue. And we studied it all the way out to the fifth one. Even the fifth heat wave that came during the summer, there was still a 20% bump. So know your capacity, have your pricing right, have your strategy of how do we maximize on these installations when we do get these heat waves, and it'll be go time. You'll really reap the benefits of a warm summer.
let me add the cherry on top of that, which is analysis I worked with trained previously coming to ServiceTitan. And one of the things is we all know the heat's going to bring the calls. So the calls are going to come. Be prepared for that. Make sure you have your overflow ready. If you aren't sure how to handle that, I know ServiceTitan has got live services and other different kinds of product to do that. But that's not the cherry. So when the heat wave comes and you're going to miss some calls, you're going to record some, you might be sad, to Chris's point, I missed that install. Here's the thing, there is a second demand hub that happens 2 to 3 days after a heat wave. And working with Train did the analysis. Guess what? Those are people trying to get pricing checks. They're trying to get a second price. So you potentially have a second bite at the apple to call those people back within a day or two and ask them, hey, what happened? Can I service you? I can I give you a second bid? So there will be a second bite at the apple in call demand that we've seen within a couple days.
That's smart. I had a contractor that used to, a competitor that used to advertise that home of the free second opinion. Made me so dang mad. But you know what? He got work off of it. But hey, Josh, so imagine this. All right, last thing on this. And I used to get so frustrated whenever I would look back at the day before and I'd be like, why did we go on that call versus not going on this call? This one had a trip and breaker, or, maybe it was something like that. And we knew it was an old system. Why did we end up going on this, you know, warranty call on something we didn't even install? So it made no sense. So imagine, what if your CSRs could just book calls? They book the calls, and then you leverage Titan Intelligence. Dispatch Pro would then look at all those calls and do Moneyball on it. Man, it could figure out who's the right technician for at this time and send them right in and predict the job value within a few dollars of what that thing is going to bring in. And it can automate all that for you. Talk about a game changer. So when we're talking about being ready for these heat waves and maximizing, that's just another tip that a lot of contractors are doing now. They're letting AI, which is TI here, Titan Intelligence, do it for them. So that way they can maximize these opportunities in the right tech, the right time, and based on an algorithm that it's running behind the scenes to figure all this stuff out. I don't even know how it does it, but it's magic. But it sends the right stuff, produces a lot of money. So might as well take advantage of stuff like that.
It really is magic. It's amazing the sentiment about AI over the years. I remember, Deanna, I think in a blog post you called it AI fear, now to AI FOMO. It used to be everybody's afraid of it. Now it's like, oh man, if I'm not on this, if I'm not using it, I'm missing out. And so, yeah, as technology advances, I can see how that can really impact that bimodal distribution. Those who adopt the leading cutting edge technology, and those who don't and get left behind. Deanna, to close here, can you talk about the ServiceTitan benchmark report? What is it, and why did we make the benchmark report?
So I love Chris's explanation. So while I may be the mother of the benchmark report, the user is really the valuable point. We did it because customers were calling folks like Chris Hunter and saying, "This is what I'm doing. I've got 12% revenue growth or 5% revenue growth. Is that good? My ticket price is this. Is that good? I don't know." And what we saw was that it really depended on what peers like you were doing. Whereas 5% may seem horrible for some folks. When you look at peers like them, everyone was actually losing money, perhaps in that area, or actually only 1%. So 5% was awesome. And some folks who had 15% said, I'm killing it. I don't need to worry about it. And they were actually in areas that were doing 25 and 30%. So it became a good barometer to, am I getting left behind? Am I keeping pace? What should I be doing? And so Chris, you have a lot more live stories about how the benchmark was used.
Well, I mean, that's it. It's basically they want to know what the best of the best are doing and how they stack up. So that's what I love about it. I was always motivated by that because you don't know what you don't know, and until you know what's possible, sometimes you just get stuck in a rut thinking, "Yeah, this is how it is," when it may not be the case. So I love the benchmark report. If anybody wants to know how to find it, when you're on Service Titan, if you'll go up to the little rocket ship, Titan Advisor up there, and you click on it, then you'll see it says download my benchmark report. It's over on the right hand side. It's kind of a little bit difficult to find, but you can find it. It's right underneath your Titan score. Download the report, and it always has great data on there about your company, how you're stacking up, but also just about like what Deanna's talked about here today, how the whole industry is, some trends, the consumer confidence. I look forward to it. Every time Deanna says, "Hey, I got a new one coming out," I'm like, "Yes, send it to me. Let me check it out." So you should be excited to see it as well.
Yeah, and the benchmark report comes out quarterly, and so it's always up to date. It's taking into account everything that's changing in the economy, the consumer confidence, like how is that impacting everybody? You can kind of see and have a fair assessment about where you stand. Now, if you're not a ServiceTitan customer, I know there are some blog posts in the benchmark report that kind of highlight these bigger trends. We can link those in the description of this episode. So if you're listening, you're like, dang, I don't have the benchmark report. I wish I could still learn from this. We'll link some of those blog posts in the description. You can dive deeper into some of the topics we covered today. So last question. I know we covered so much, but if someone's listening to this and they're like, wow, this is some great information, but I want to do something from this. I want to take this and actually apply it. Chris, what is the one thing they should be doing?
The one thing I think starts with leadership. So I want to go back with leadership because everything rises and falls on leadership, as John Maxwell said. So if you're the leader of the company, it's time for you to decide. Do you want to be on the tall hump or the small hump on the bimodal model? Are you going to win? Or are you going to be stuck behind looking at those that are winning? I hope not. But it's your choice and decide. And if you decide you want to start winning, you're tired of just this whole hum. Maybe in a down economy, you're getting beat. Decide it's time to win, and you do this very simply by focusing on the basics. This is serving well. This is just doing the things that need to be done and doing it consistently, taking it one day, one call at a time, and executing. And having no excuses. Fill that board, train your technicians, your CSRs, leverage the technology to automate as much stuff as you can, and go out and execute.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris and Deanna, for joining us today. This will be a quarterly series. Whenever the new benchmark report comes out, we will analyze all the data, tell the story of what's going on, and then give you some tactical advice on how to adapt. Thank you for joining us, and we will catch you on the next one.